I'm very pleased to introduce Shannon Barsotti, who is the Community Development Director for Bennington. Shannon started out in the Midwest and is kind of working her way east. Nebraska?
Well, originally Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Kind of working her way around, Oklahoma, Kansas, some time in Chicago, as I recall, where she had some contact, indirectly at least, with Rotary and Rotary International at the headquarters in Chicago. And she's landed here and living in Pownell, family of 2 kids, in the school system here, and about 2 months in.
That's right.
In
the town of Bennington.
2 months in with the town of Bennington now, and she wants to share a little bit about her ideas and thoughts and what's on the table for the town of Bennington and the community development sector. So Shannon, welcome.
Thanks for inviting me to be here today. Okay, so I'm going to use this mic.
Yep.
All right, so you're in charge.
Well, I can
do it. Can I
come
up here?
Yeah, no problem.
Or do you want? Okay.
Wherever you want to be.
Well, let's see. I got to be able to see what I'm looking at, so maybe I'll just stand right here.
Maybe is this over here? Would
Oh, over here's fine too. Yeah, I'll do that. Okay. Well, thanks everyone, and thanks to Beth Wallace for inviting me to come and join you today. Is this working? Yeah. Okay. Great. So my title is the Community Development Director for the town of Bennington, and I thought a way to frame this discussion would be to use sort of the template that I just recently gave to the select board. That was a summary and kind of a report of the different projects that I've been working on, because it is a bit of a umbrella job, the Department of Community Development, and it has changed a bit over the years. So I don't know if you guys have had some of my predecessors here to visit. Zerwatt, did she ever come and speak? And then Michael Harrington before her. So when Mike Harrington had the job, I believe it was called the Director of Community and Economic Development. And I still wear that hat quite a bit, but part of why that changed in focus is some of the nuts and bolts economic development, like, for example, recruitment of businesses to, relocate or looking at the vacant, storefronts and things like that, has really fallen more under the Bennington County Industrial Corporation and the great work of Bill Colvin. So I'm still really involved in that process with the other partners in economic development, but my hat is really more about community development. And the connection to Rotary is, the town really recognized that there needs to be a staff person from the town that's a liaison with all of the hardworking volunteers in the Bennington community to really help, in projects that relate to the vitality of our town. So that's a lot of what I do, is work as a partner with various volunteer groups in the town, potentially with the Rotarians at some point. So community development block grant funding is, I believe, part of why this position was created in the first place. That's a community development block grant is a program of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. It's been around for a while. And so those fund local community development activities such as affordable housing, anti-poverty programs, and infrastructure development. And the town has had for a number of years, at least 30, I couldn't quite nail down how long, a person in this role to oversee these grants. So what I do is submit reports and requisitions for our sub-grantees, because the funding comes directly to the town. And then I meet with potential applicants, and I'm kind of the liaison with the state at this level, with the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. So some of our current sub-grantees are NeighborWorks, which is really looking at rehabbing some of the historic properties, particularly close to downtown, for affordable rentals. Shire's Housing, has a few projects going right now, Monument View Apartments and the Applegate development, and that's around energy, having a new biomass system there. Hale Resources, I don't know if anyone's familiar with John Hale, but he's doing a lot of property management, including the Putnam Block, and is working on a renovation on Pleasant Street for affordable housing as well, and then the Putnam Block, of course. So these are what we're doing right now for community development block grants. You can, oh, here we go. Revolving loan programs are also another piece of economic development. The town has a revolving loan fund for small businesses as well as for housing. And for the purpose for businesses is particularly in the downtown and historic district to have low interest loans for small businesses that want to either relocate or expand their business or create a new business. So I meet with the potential applicants to discuss their loan and then work with the town staff to and then present that to the select board. So the most current one that we had was, I don't know if you're familiar with the renovation of JC's Tavern, is now the Dutchman's Tavern. And they just opened and they received a low interest loan from the town. So that was exciting to be part of on my first week of the job. You can keep going. Bennington Economic Development Partners. So I'm the liaison with the Better Bennington Corporation, the Bennington County Regional Commission, the Bennington County Industrial Corporation. The red group is the Regional Economic Development Group. And I'm wondering if anyone's on that committee in the room. They've been working on looking at the partnership across Bennington County and Windham County of our whole region. Part of that was some of the larger federal economic development funds. Vermont just doesn't have the population density to really receive that kind of funding for economic development. But by partnering with Windham County, we reached that threshold, and we've really been looking at ways that we can kind of look at best practices and potential partnerships across southern Vermont. And then of course the Bennington Chamber, the Workforce and Education Committee, Bennington Recruitment Group, which is sort of led by Bill Colvin, and that's more directly thinking about what potential tenants can come into Putnam Block, for example, or other properties, particularly downtown. And then Grow Bennington Initiative. I don't know if you guys all know Grow Bennington. Lynn Green really started that as kind of an outgrowth of the Better Bennington Corporation, and they're the ones that are behind the helping to fund the splash pad, putting the beautiful tree lights downtown and the banners. So our focus has been on getting the Putnam Block project started, finishing the SEDS process. Now I'm not going to remember what the SEDS stands for. Does anybody remember? There you go. Good job, Beth. So the SEDS process has been looking, like I was saying, that RED group, the Regional Economic Development Group, has looked at best practices for community economic development across all of southern Vermont. So next week, there's going to be a Southern Vermont Economy Summit, and the projects that were chosen will be, presented at that summit. And then so I just say that's coming up at Mount Snow next week, and then also the Bennington County Regional Commission annual meeting is coming up next week as well. So there's a lot of partnering that the town is doing in our region, so that we're looking at how we can work together. And to me, it seems like this is something that part of why I was really interested in taking the job is seeing that kind of commitment from the town to work collaboratively and across all of these different areas is really a great way forward. So another piece that I'm doing that relates to economic development is reviving what Michael Harrington started with. He received some funding through the USDA Rural Development Fund to start this whole campaign marketing Bennington of Vermont Begins Here, and created some really great videos out of that, some photography, a website. But then it's sort of, it needs to be revived because it's sort of out of date. It needs a lot of new content, but it's a great starting point rather than recreating the wheel. Let's look at some of the things that were created through that initiative. And so I don't know how many have followed the select board, but we put out a digital marketing request for proposals. We had a lot of traction with that, and we had 8 different proposals looking at how to build a new website, really make it drive people to that website, and then also create an email campaign, to put out marketing about the various events that are going to be hosted on this site. So we decided to just recently hire 802 Marketing, which is a local company right here in Bennington at the airport, with a lot of expertise. They also gave us a great deal because they're really committed to this mission. So it's exciting that we're going to be getting this started. And I've met with the marketing task force, which includes Lynn Green from the Four Chimneys Inn, Sheila Harding from Bennington Potters, Maru here at the Country Club, and Eric Peterson of Old Castle Theater, who had really put a lot of their own time and funds into marketing Bennington. And so they've sort of led this process. The Cultural Plan Steering Committee, which I'll talk a little bit more about, Outdoor Recreation, Historical Society, merchants, to think about how this site can really link all of these initiatives. So that's our goal. And I'm working with the task force to collect content and an outline. 802 is going to start working next month, and then with a date to launch the site at probably towards the end of August. So that's happening. And then one of the ways, and I believe Mike Harrington sort of got on board with to help with the Historic Preservation Commission, and then that became part of this role. And so I'm a member of the Historic Preservation Commission, and their role is really to work with the Planning Commission and Development Review Board to look at our downtown design district. We have Anne Bugby and Joe Hall are members, and people with a long history in Bennington and knowledge. And so I'm really just starting with that group, but one of the things as kind of a side of that is I was approached by the field study class at Mount Anthony, and one of their seniors was looking for an internship to do, and with a real interest, he had a real interest in history and architecture, and so he's working with the Historic Preservation Commission and the Bennington Historical Society to update all of our walking tours, and eventually those will go onto this Bennington Vermont Begins Here website. There you go. Townwide recreation is a huge piece of what I'm doing right now. Thanks to Zerwatt, she really got a lot of these projects started, and Betsy. The Rec Center YMCA partnership. The Y has been the Berkshire family YMCA has come into on an interim basis for a year to manage the Rec Center programming. And so I meet bi-weekly with the Rec Center director, Jess Rumlow, and the other town staff to discuss the progress and work on community outreach about the new Rec Center YMCA programs, and convene a transition committee to really make sure that this is a partnership that's going to work and that community members are involved in. And so we've been meeting, and also part of that is a monthly walk to the Rec Center from the town office, which has been a fun way to get people over to the Rec Center and see some of the new programs that are happening, and at the Senior Center as well. And then I've been working with Betsy and Beth to look at how we can also make this a great partnership between UCS and their expansion at the Rec Center. So here's some flyers about some of the programs that the Y is bringing. Summer camp, this is a longer camp, the Camp Green Mountain, and then some smaller camps, Destination Discovery, which is a science and math-based program. Keep going. And then an all-around sports program, Together We Play, and then a hiking program as well. Another recreation project is reviving Stark Street Park. Stark Street is off of Dewey. This is a map that the BCRC created, And this is the potential, part of this grew out of a pop-up event that happened last summer where Zerwatt got a grant from the AARP to bring in community members and really envision what they would like to see for Stark Street, because the playground had been removed and fallen into disrepair there. And so right now it's just an open field. And so some of the ideas that came out of that were this idea of a bicycle pump track, which is sort of a way to introduce kids to mountain biking. Bennington Area Trail System really took that on and did some fundraising, and that is now there. So if you haven't seen it, it's not open to the public yet, but it's sort of taking over this piece, is the pump track. And then in the middle here, what I'm working on right now is called a natural playground. And so what we're doing is working with the playground designer to incorporate a new playground into the landscape so that it includes more trees. Some of the play structures will be built into a hill, and it's just a way to have a more creative way for kids to connect with nature as well. And then the goal is also to have a walking path all the way around and cutting through the middle so that it's something that all ages can enjoy. So here's the site map with the playground designer. Here's where the hill is going to be in the middle. This is the pump track. It's a little bit more stretched, actually, because it's bigger than that. And then there's going to be a slide, some forts built into the hill. And this is an example of this land. The splash pad, I'm sure you've all seen on the corner, at the four corners. And this is the design from Goldstone Architecture. That is, we just turned it on now that we finally got past winter. And the next step is landscaping and doing a few more installations before summer opening. The Bennington County Cultural Plan is a partnership that was funded through, I think the seed of this really came through the Better Bennington Corporation and the Bennington Area Arts Council to look at kind of a larger vision for the arts in Bennington and the arts as economic development. So that came about through a municipal planning grant with the town of Manchester. So it's actually countywide, and I've been to a few meetings as they're wrapping that up. They hired a consultant to help write the plan. Many different towns within Bennington County have been a part of that process as well. The next one. This is maybe hard to read, but I pulled a bit of just to give you an idea of what comes out of that plan. Here's some of the strategies. Establishing a toolkit for creative producers and creative consumers. An internal cultural advocacy message, so kind of more of a resources internally for artists within the community, and an external cultural tourism message. So the external piece is really where coming in on that new marketing initiative, Vermont Begins Here. And then innovative art making, programming, and engagement activities, and shared leadership, really across the county. So this is exciting because it's something that's never been done before. And some of the other volunteer groups and community development partners that I've been working with are within the area of recreation, Bennington Area Trail System, Rise Vermont, which is Andrea Malinowski is leading that. That started up in the northern part of the state. And it's a statewide initiative around healthy lifestyles. And Andrea works in partnership. She has an office at the hospital and has done an amazing job of convening all of the different groups that are working on recreation.
She will be our speaker next week.
So you'll learn a lot more about Rise Vermont. So and she's been she has a series of stakeholder meetings where I've met a lot of the different committees that are forming out of that. One of them being the Bennington Bike Committee that sort of came out of the Ninja Path planning with the BCRC. And then the Berkshire Family YMCA with the Rec Center, Kappa at Bennington College, Southwestern Vermont Supervisory Union, and the Medical Center. So with the schools, I attend monthly meetings with other town staff so that I'm in the loop with the schools. And also another piece of that is looking at this concept of a Y without walls, where the Y can not only be doing programming in the rec center and the senior center, but also at the schools, because there's such a need for before and after care. So that's another thing that we're looking at as a potential partnership with the Y. And then, of course, with the hospital, the SVMC has been a big part of helping to support the recreation initiatives that are happening at the various parks. And then the Vermont Department of Health is funding the new natural playground that I talked about. Alliance for Community Transformations and working with our youth and prevention. And I've also attended a number of the meetings of the opioid response team that's grown out of the Blueprint for Health and is looking at also prevention. So that is, in a nutshell, all of the things that's happening with the Community Development Department. And I'm happy to take questions. I'll keep holding on to this so you can hear me. Go ahead.
Big question everybody's gonna be asking is, when are they gonna start the Button project? Yeah.
Okay, well, the latest that I've seen, because I do, I am involved in some of the funding for that is coming through the town and through the Community Development Block Grant. And the goal is to have the closing at the end of May. So I don't know the exact date, but it's coming.
23rd.
Yeah, I know that Bread Loaf, who's going to be doing the work, they've hired the contractors. Everyone's ready to go. So it's coming. Yes.
You talked earlier about, or you indicated that people are dealing with the Southern Vermont College closing. Can you talk?
Yes. And I'm sorry, I kind of went through that pretty quickly. The town really doesn't have a lot of control over any of that process right now, especially because the assets of Southern Vermont College are really going to be in the hands of the lenders, of the banks. But what the town has been doing is Jim Sullivan from the BCRC convened a series of meetings at Kappa with the Bennington Chamber, the town, the Department of Labor, to really look at how can we make sure that we're all working together to support we met with the president of SVC and said, what do you need our help with most? And it really was looking at making sure that all of the students are supported until graduation, really have a plan, and all of the staff also are supported. So the Department of Labor was there doing job fairs, et cetera, and really connected to all the economic development agencies. And then also, from the town's perspective, it's really looking at what are the costs and what are the responsibilities for maintaining the property. How can we make sure that security is going to be a huge issue once the college is closed? So really discussing all of the pieces that need to be in place. But other than that, there's not a whole lot we can do yet until some of the finances are figured out as the closing happens.
Okay. A positive comment
Okay.
and then a question.
Okay.
Having coordination of all your partner organizations in the community, that's a very positive thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that we haven't had in Bennington in the past.
Right.
And I can see some real growth for all of it through that.
Right.
And for the benefit of those of us that are a little bit older, that have been through this time and time again, that group of people who I'm familiar with and contact from time to time feel that this full development of the Putnam Square and all of the downtown things that we're going to do, we think that this can be a very positive way in which we revitalize our downtowns for New England communities that have been suffering for a long time from the lack of that.
Right.
And done right, we think this is going to be very positive. Have you been getting any questions from other towns about how we're doing this and our progress? Is there any interest from other towns about what's going on in Bennington?
Well, I think most of the questions so far that I've received are more, when's it gonna happen? You know, we've heard so much about it, and so there is an excitement, but it's also, it has been, you know, there have been delays, and it's such a complicated process to coordinate. But I do think that it is going to be a catalyst, like you said, to really, and that's the goal, is to just spur more growth and development, and it's going to be a huge accomplishment for Bennington to do this.
Yeah.
So, but not yet. I have a feeling that those questions will come as soon as it really starts to roll out and we see that progress. I think that Bennington is actually going to get a lot of press for the Putnam. So, go ahead.
Yes, I'm a perpetual advocate of North Bennington, and
Okay.
if you haven't been up there recently, please do check out Lake Perrin, Lions
Yes.
Park, Park McCullough House, the Mile Around Woods, the McCullough Library. It's a small area, but it's rich with all sorts of resources, which I think would be great to incorporate into, especially some of the regional marketing that you're doing. So.
I totally agree. I'm a huge fan, and my kids went to Southshire Community
great.
School, and so I'm in North Bennington. My son is still there, and so yes, we use all those resources. And when we are, I mean, this is going to be a specific, you know, it's all of Bennington.
Mm-hmm.
This Vermont begins here. It's not just downtown. That's obviously a big piece. But when we look at recreation, when we look at arts and culture, there's so much to highlight from North Bennington. Definitely.
I'm aware that there are, just counting as I was sitting here listening, at least 7 different historic groups. And I had left out Park McCullough, you know, so there we are, 8.
Right.
In the community that don't necessarily, if you were trying to find them and what they do, there is no place to go.
Right.
And if someone were, do you envision your website having a thing, historic Vermont, Bennington, and then a list of, because for example, the Friends of the Monument, they do things that are really fun,
Right.
but if you don't know to type in Friends of the Monument, you'd never find them.
Definitely.
Old First Church does lots of things as the church.
Right.
If you don't happen upon us, and you know, I can go on. There's, you know, as I said, I could figure out 8 places.
Definitely.
We
I
need
think
a
there should
group.
be, and there should be,
We need a place.
right. Well, I mean, I think that this is a, this website is a, its purpose is really for tourism, but I do think many people come to Bennington to see the history and to learn about the history. I mean, just look at how many people are walking around the monument.
Well,
And
just
so-
ourselves, if you want to know how do I find such and such,
Right.
who do I talk to, where's their email or a website.
Yeah.
If you don't have it in your cell phone someplace or on a list, you're lost.
Yeah, well, I do think that this site could be a great way to catalog those resources, and it could just be Bennington history is the headline, and then you go down the list, and that I think is going to be exciting to have all of these things in one place, because they are pretty scattered right now. And I've just learned a lot through working with the high school student. I mean, you know, I've been in the museum library, at the Bennington Museum, and at the Vermont Community Room, which at the public library I had never been to, and I'm thinking, more people need to know about this. So I agree.
So I'm going to go back a few years when I was in travel and tourism. And I'm still in travel and tourism because I help friends with Airbnb and very involved in the Airbnb world these days. And there's a conference in Brattleboro on Airbnb, and
Yes.
as you know, it's a gig economy these days, and everybody's looking for their gig. But travel and tourism is such a major part of what we have in southern Vermont.
Right.
And when I used to run my inn, I would say to people, you know, you need to go to Bennington for dinner, for the arts, for this, and they go to Manchester, because I'm in Sandgate, for their Saturday night, and then their Sunday, they leave and go through Bennington. It's just a twist on, and I believe Vermont begins in Bennington. But it's interesting when we look at way travel and tourism works. People come to the northern part of the county and then leave through it. And They'll go to the museum on their Sundays on their way out of town or something like that. But I just think we have to constantly still embrace travel and tourism. It's a big part of everything we do through history and all those pieces. So as you were going through your list, as much as I'm on half of that other side of the thing, I just, Airbnb is a big thing going on here now in this community. And if you go to Bennington County, you would be amazed at how many of your neighbors are renting out their homes.
Oh yeah, I have a number of, so I'm in Pownell, and I have a number of friends in Pownell who rent out their places, and you would think, who's gonna come to Pownell? And you really would be amazed at how many people are coming to the middle of nowhere in Pownell to stay at an Airbnb. And so, and I think what we're all finding as we interact with these folks is that everybody wants to know, what do I do? Where do I go? And so having this resource is going to be huge, and really giving the message that, you know, there's enough to do in Bennington to
Right.
make it a
A whole
destination.
destination and a place.
And
to
not,
stay.
you just have to be here and then you can go up to Manchester or just go to Williamstown. It's like, there's really enough to do in Bennington.
It really
And
is.
it's just really kind of highlighting all those things.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm wondering how, and I haven't been able to formulate this question well yet, how your position works with the chamber, or if this lives elsewhere, for people who have recently moved to Bennington. So the chamber has the Stay to
That's the
Stay
other thing.
initiative, and they have the Shire's Young Professionals.
Right.
But then North Bennington has this other kind of ad hoc community group talking about community development just within the village. And I remember talking to Dana's wife, Jenny, I think in the grocery store, because that's where we always run into each other, about, you know, would it make sense to work with realtors or employers to have a welcome to Bennington packet?
Yeah,
And maybe
definitely.
included in that is a coupon to the public house, or a ticket to the VAE basement series, or something like that. Because what I'm finding, both from like meeting peers and from hiring new folks to the area, is if you don't make friends and find your network within a year, you're looking for jobs elsewhere. Like that is what actually keeps people, is finding the network and having things to do on the weekends.
Right,
So I just think that's an opportunity, and it's not any one, it doesn't live anywhere.
right.
You know what I mean, with any one organization.
I think that's a good point, and I think it's thinking about being more welcoming, you know, because I do feel like it takes a while. I mean, I know that in Pownell it takes a while to meet your neighbors, but I tend to be an explorer by nature, and I have traveled and moved around a lot, so I just get out there and find stuff. But not everybody's going to do that, and so I think realtors are a great way to do that. A lot of what, you know, I'm doing in leading this Vermont Begins Here piece is working with Matt at the chamber. And part of the need for this was that as the chamber becomes more of a regional chamber, you know, the shires, then the question became, okay, who's really just focused on Bennington area? So that's where this became an important need. But I do think that figuring out what they have done really well, and a lot of the site will link to some of those things, you know, but having an organized approach to welcoming our new community members and visitors. And one of the pieces of that will be a link that's, you know, it'll say something like, you know, move here or start a business here. Because I think when Mike Harrington developed that site, it had more of an economic development focus. So there's some really great videos of the makers of Bennington. And so there is still going to be a component of that, but the difference will be the chamber site is really a member site, and this is really going to be a visitor site. And Bennington's never had that before.
That's great. That's really
So,
good. Excellent.
All right, can you stay around and take some more questions? I have to get these people back to work.
sure, I'm happy to